some of you may have seen our announcement with NetApp a few weeks ago, or you may have heard this in the keynotes today or yesterday. We've been working with NetApp for a while to build cloud volumes for GCP, which we'll talk about today. And essentially, the vision is to build a high-performance file storage offering, a fully managed service that's integrated with GCP. Something that supports multiple protocols, is very versatile. You can, whether you're using NFS or you're using SMB, or if you're looking for something that integrates with Kubernetes or any of the GCP managed services, the idea is to have one file storage service that can provide that. Also, if you're used to advanced management features like snapshotting, replication, cloning, and you want the same thing in the cloud, this is the service that would provide that. Also, and what truly makes this a partnership of firsts is if you're a Google Cloud user, or a GCP user, and you're used to our UI, or you're used to our billing, or working with Google support, none of that changes when you use Cloud Volumes with GCP. So essentially, the idea is to give you a completely seamless experience if you're using Cloud Volumes with Google Cloud Platform, and you keep using the tools that you're used to when you use Google Cloud. Now, before I go further, let me quickly introduce the team that will be joining me today in today's session. So my colleague from Google, Devin Lehman, he's been working with me on this project. And from NetApp, we have Alim Karim, who's the product manager for Cloud Volumes, and Jonsi Stefansson, who's coming here all the way from Iceland, leads cloud services at NetApp. So we're going to keep this light on slides and focus more on demos. Just to give you a quick overview of what you can expect over the next few minutes. So we'll have Alim talk about why customers may want to use this service, some context around use cases. We'll talk about what this service really is, capabilities of this service, what's unique about this service, and as well as the architecture. And then we're going to switch gears. Jonsi and Devin will come on stage and do some cool demos and talk about how do you create a cloud volume, or how do you create a snapshot, and how do you manage the file servers that you spin up in the cloud. And then Alim is going to wrap up with talking about use cases, and we'll do a Q&A after that. So with that, I'll hand it over to Alim to talk about Cloud Volumes.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for, again, attending an afternoon session. So let's get right to it. Again, we want to cover maybe 2 or 3 slides in the beginning and really hand it over to Jonsi, Devin, and myself who'll walk through the demo. So before we get too deep into the technical stuff, what we wanted to do was sort of step back and look at this from more a strategic point of view and really understand the customer context, right? So before we developed Cloud Volumes, we spent a lot of time talking to customers and understanding the nature of problems as it related to unstructured data, files, and public cloud. And after analyzing all of those conversations, what we found was you could basically categorize these problems into 3 main sets. And each of these 3 main sets had a key persona. So first, you had a set of application administrators, application owners that were trying to move POSIX-compliant applications from on-premise into GCP. And they were doing these for a variety of reasons, right? Perhaps they were shutting down a data center. Perhaps they had a cloud-first strategy. Perhaps they were trying to modernize the application, and the first stage was to move it to GCP to do that. Or perhaps the application was supporting a business process that was variable in nature, and they wanted to take advantage of the elasticity of the cloud to support that business process. So there's a varying different things on why they were trying to do this, but the lack of enterprise-grade file services in GCP essentially left them with 2 options. One, you go through this massive re-architecture process, even though there may not be anything wrong with the architecture of your app. It's risky, it's complex. Or you just say simply, I'm not going to move this application, right? So we saw a problem there that could be solved. The second set of people and problems were a set of developers and DevOps engineers that were either trying to build applications that required shared file semantics in GCP, or they were trying to use workflows that require persistent storage in GCP. An example we've seen over the last year come up a lot is applications that are being refactored to use containerized platforms and run on GKE, requiring persistent storage. Cloud Volumes is a good fit for that. And then finally, we have a set of data analysts and data engineers that have unstructured data set on-premise that are trying to take those data sets to the cloud to actually extract value out of those data sets. What we found common across all these three problem sets is the set of service expectations. So anything that solved these problems had to have these three key things. And the one that bubbled up to the top, this notion of experience, was pretty much like the paramount thing. And experience here has multiple facets. It's not just about how well integrated the product is from a look and feel perspective into GCP, but users really wanted a consistent experience with Google. So that means support, that means billing, that means operations, and a multitude of other product-related aspects deeply integrated into GCP. And that's what we focused on to bring with Cloud Volumes. The other two pieces around consumption and economics actually go hand in hand, right? So with the ability or this thing being a true cloud service, they expect consumption to be able to go up and down, and the economics should match that pattern. So now let's talk about Cloud Volumes for GCP and the various elements involved. And again, this is more of a service overview slide, and we'll talk about the technical details here in a second. But the simplest way to think about Cloud Volumes for GCP is that they are a simple-to-consume, performant NFS or SMB endpoint. It's a no-ops service, so you as an application owner or as a developer simply just consume that NFS or SMB endpoint. You don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure-related tasks around setting things up, patching things, maintaining things, scaling things. That's handled seamlessly between NetApp and Google. You just get the NFS or SMB endpoint that you're interested in. The second thing around native user experience, and the demo will really show you what we mean by that, but the engineering teams have spent a ton of time integrating this so that it looks and feels exactly like any other Google service, right? To the point where there's no separate punch-outs, there's no separate UIs. How you authenticate into the Google Cloud Console stays consistent as you move into the service. So there's a security element to this integration as well. And I can describe it all I want, but you'll get to see it firsthand. So NetApp has had a rich history in data management over the last 20 years, and we're bringing all of that goodness to Cloud Volumes. The ability to take snapshots, the ability to then create rapid copies out of these snapshots, and the ability to synchronize data. That's all coming to Cloud Volumes. Support is another thing we hear from customers about a lot, right? Oftentimes when we talk about new products, we focus on the beginning, right? It's like, what does the user interface look like, and how well is that integrated? But we have to think about the life cycle of the product, right? And things will go wrong. And customers want to know that there is an integrated support system to help them when things do go wrong. So with Cloud Volumes for GCP, support is actually integrated with Google in that L1 support is offered by Google. Google always answers the support call, and Google always maintains the customer relationship with the customer. They may escalate to NetApp in the back, but Google always owns the customer relationship. Moving on to some of the elements on the right-hand side. So this is a cloud service, right? So it offers a true pay-go consumption model. It's based on allocated capacity, and you can vary the amount of allocated capacity over the course of a month. Billing is integrated into GCP as well. So all of that allocated capacity that you consume over a month is billed directly through Google. You don't get any other separate invoices or things from NetApp. Everything happens through GCP, again, keeping within that same ecosystem. And then finally, we're going to enable hybrid enablement for the service in that we're going to allow customers to move data both from on-premise and other SMB or NFS services into Cloud Volumes. And then the region piece. We're going to start this service in US East 4. We're going to roll out to other regions in the US by the end of the year, as well as some regions in Europe, and we'll cover that towards the end of the presentation. So one thing that is very unique about Cloud Volumes for GCP is this notion of service levels. And so it bears a few minutes worth talking about. So think about Cloud Volumes coming in 3 flavors. And these 3 flavors are identical in terms of the protocols they offer, as well as the rich data management features that they offer. So across these 3 flavors, you get SMB or NFS, you get snapshots, you get copies, you get data synchronization. How these 3 service levels differ is in the amount of performance that you get per allocated terabyte of capacity, right? So the 3 service levels are listed here, standard, premium, and extreme. In the case of standard, you get 16 megabytes per terabyte allocated. In the case of premium, 64 megabytes per terabyte allocated. And in the case of extreme, 128 megabytes per terabyte allocated. Why did we do this? We did this because customers are going to use Cloud Volumes for different use cases, right? So if you're doing virtualized applications, if you're doing general purpose databases, Premium is probably where you want to start. If you're doing high performance computing, if you're doing genomic analysis, Extreme is where you want to go, right? But we also give you the flexibility to change these tiers, because oftentimes we hear from customers, we kind of know, but we're not sure. So start off with one, and you're free to change it to another one. So before we go into the demo, just one quick technical slide on what the building blocks are and what this architecture looks like, right? So in this case, on the far side, we have the Cloud Volume Service. This is where you provision and get your volumes from. On this side, on the left-hand side, we actually have a GCP project. You have a region in that project. You have a set of instances within a given VPC. And all of those instances have access to Cloud Volumes. And you can control this access using export policies. And you'll see this in the demo in terms of how we secure these Cloud Volumes. The key thing I want to point out here is that Cloud Volumes are a regionally accessible resource. So even if you have compute instances in Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3 in a given region, all of those compute instances can access Cloud Volumes in that given region. So with that, the engineering guys told me, don't go more than 3 or 4 slides. So I kept to that limit, and now I'm going to bring them on to actually talk about the product itself and give us a demo. So Yonsi, Devin, please.
Hey guys, hey everybody. We actually want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, we share the feeling that we hate slides. And we would always, and everybody said, hey, you guys are not doing a live demo. Of course you're doing a live demo, even though it's from a staging environment, right? All the bells and whistles. So we actually want it to be really interactive. So if you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll stop and answer all those questions.
Yeah, and maybe we can start. So how many are familiar with the ONTAP UI itself? Have people used that before? Awesome. Okay, so one of the big things that Lim highlighted early on is that this is the first standalone service within GCP that's going to look like a third-party service. So everything within Cloud Console, the provisioning of volume, it's going to be the same thing you're used to in the NetApp environment. So we thought just to kick things off, we kind of show you the discovery phase within Marketplace, and then go into the solution and kind of click around and see what's happening. So with that, you search NetApp, launch the solution. You're going to have the overview. It's going to talk its NetApp solution running within Cloud Console, the types of services, when it's been updated, things like that. But it brings you right into the volumes page. So again, if you're used to seeing Cloud Volumes, you're going to notice things like the name, the region it's deployed in, the lifecycle, the service level, the usage, and what's reserved for snapshots.
Yeah, and you can actually customize, like you can in everything in GCP, you can actually customize the way your dashboard actually looks like. If you want to pop up, for example, who the project owner is, what region it is in, and the availability or the SLA tiers that you have actually selected.
A few other things to note here is that transition between the marketplace and this particular view, as I mentioned earlier, and you see it, that there's no other authentication or punch-out that you have to do. It's just seamless. It just goes from the launcher into this particular UI. The other thing to also note here is that the service levels and all of the columns, but the volumes always exist in the context of a Google project. Just like any other Google resource within a project, if you have 2 separate projects, it's 2 separate sets of volumes. Volumes in a project always exist within the context of a project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so going through the creation process again should be similar to what you're used to in the past, but click create a volume, choose whether it's NFS or SMB, enter your name, and you'll see we've done this a few times. Choose the volume path, and then choose the service level. So something that's super important with this particular solution itself is subjective to what's going on in the time of year, subjective to the industry you're using. You can toggle back and forth between service level, subjective to the performance you're asking for.
Yeah, if I can enter. The service levels, I mean, you can actually view the UI as being stateless. Every single action within the UI is an API call. So you can actually automate that via an API. And for example, if you're having like seasonal spikes, or you know that the traffic that is coming in at 4 o'clock, you can actually switch on the fly between standard, premium, and extreme. By doing that, we actually have like a scheduler that actually looks at if the controller is congested, then it actually moves and migrates the volume. So this is something that we felt like was really, really important to be able to meet these unexpected loads, and you should be able to do it on the fly.
Yeah, awesome. Going along the same path, you select the region which you want to deploy in, if you want to create a snapshot for this particular view, and then your allocated capacity, 5 terabytes. From here, if you're a GCP user, it's going to be a similar experience as well. You choose a percentage of snapshots you'd like. There's a little grade slider. And then we can choose export policies, which is something that Lim talked about earlier.
So this is really where you get to secure that volume, right? And security, obviously, in the cloud is important, but there's multiple different aspects. This really controls who has access to this particular volume and how they have access. So you can actually limit it to a specific client by specifying one IP address, and you can say that client has read-only access, or you can do CIDR ranges, right? Saying these clients within a subnet, 10 clients, 50 clients, whatever it is, all have either read-only or read-write access. This is how security for the volume is managed.
Yeah. And within the security protocols as well, we can then choose the snapshot policy. So if we want to go hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, easy to use, easily consumable within GCP. So we're going to save that volume. It's going to load, and it's going to go back under the overview, which we were just looking at before.
And so typically at this point, right, it's like you've gone through, you've created a volume. In this case, we showed creating an NFS volume. You create an export policy. Now it's ready to be consumed, right? So the next thing you want to do is actually look at how you would mount this volume inside of your clients to access it.
So within that, we've built it in straight into the UI. You just choose the toggle or the hamburger menu on the right, get mount instructions, and you're going to see the standard calls that you make from your CLI or a particular API. We actually have it here where you can just copy directly and then fire up your terminal and mount your volume straight from the computer you're using. I think this is really great for any particular user because you don't have to go between different interfaces, and again, it's just drag and drop.
And maybe show the difference to like mount instructions for SMB as well?
Yep. There you go.
No. So one of the things that we are actually going to be introducing is you can actually have multiple protocols on the same volume. So you can actually service both Windows and Linux clients from the same dataset.
And this is something that we've heard, again, from customers about, is that they have basically treating these volumes as a high-performance bus between applications. Like in healthcare, they have applications that are Unix-based, applications that are Windows-based, and they need a way to share this data. So these volumes act like a common repository across two very different architectures to enable that sharing of data to happen. And I'm surprised. We haven't gotten even one question yet. Someone must be curious about something. Yeah.
So with this SMB integration and that mixed integration modeling, that can get real interesting on the
Permissions, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything in the GUI so far exposing it.
So you can actually show, if you go into the Active Directory connection, so you actually have to have your own Active Directory server running within that project, so it has network. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's how you are actually taking care of, and for example, for NFS v4, you need Kerberos and LDAP and all of that. So that's all taken care of. In the beginning, we're only doing NFS v3 and SMB. When we're introducing NFS v4, then there will be an additional tab that is doing the LDAP configuration.
And to answer your specific question around security, right? So as Jonsi said, as we introduced the both mode, what we will go into is that what kind of security style do you want on the volume, right? Because you as the owner of the volume have to pick, is it NTFS or is it Unix style security? How are the underlying ACLs actually managed, right? And that differs between how you do file sharing between Unix and Windows. So we're going to give users the control to be able to specify that, as well as, to Jonsi's point, link up to an AD server that says, okay, this is how my names are being managed and stuff.
Yeah.
An API?
Yeah.
We thought that would be the first question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
So I mean, like I said, everything in the UI is stateless, so it's actually an API call. So this is something that Google and NetApp we actually built together, and we're going to expose that next month. That's the plan.
Don't quote us on that.
Quote us on it. It's pressure. But yeah. So I mean, we've also been, for example, doing our Terraform, for example, scripting. So it actually supports Terraform. So if you want to automatically provision everything with or any configuration management tool, Puppet, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, the end goal here is there's been so much work to get these UIs integrated together from the UI to the control plane perspective, but as a developer, many don't go to UIs, right? So you'd like to use the CLI and the API, and that's the direction that we're eventually heading with this.
And many of the, even the modifications that we talked about on how you can go and edit these volumes, right? So changing service levels, for example. It's hard to say, okay, on Friday night, I'm going to go log into the UI and then change it from extreme to premium or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
These are things that exactly you would script and put as part of as a business process for a batch run or a seasonal update or whatever it is.
Oh, okay, great. Go to the microphone if you guys have questions. Sorry.
It's too late now.
Or just speak up and we can reiterate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On actual access to the UI and the service, is that based on your GCP credentials and privileges defined in IAM?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
So we're basically completely mapping the user topology of GCP. So projects, how you share, what policies you put in place actually gets adopted in here. So.
Yep. Again, if you're used to logging in and use Cloud SQL, right? The intent here is to have no different experience. So you log into Cloud Console, username and password, fire up the service, and you should be able to operate.
And we've differentiated it a little bit in terms of the discovery piece, right? So you need to be a project owner to enable the service, right? Because now you're talking about something that's a billable thing, right? So you need to be an owner to enable it. But once you're done that, then it's like editors in the project have access to be able to go create it. We do have some thoughts around how we introduce more granular IAM, right? Like down to create, update, delete type permissions, but that's something that we introduce later on.
Yep.
So is this a physical filer sitting in a data center somewhere, or is this a virtual?
Yeah. So right now it's a physical filer.
Is this a physical filer, or is it sitting somewhere in a data center?
Yeah.
Or sorry, in the cloud.
Yeah. So I mean, the software aspect is we have multiple service levels, and service level might, for example, be the lowest service level might be pure software, and then premium. If you want to reach, like for example, with genome sequencing, we had an amazing company as one of our private preview customers that really needed high performance storage to do genome sequencing. So we would never have been able to meet that on pure software. So I think the top tiers are always going to be harder.
And I think the way we wanted to abstract this away from customers, right, is give them an SLO-based endpoint, right? And then it's up to us with Google to engineer the data plane to meet that SLO.
Yeah, I was just thinking, okay, there's a globe. How many physical filers are in proximity of
Right.
GCP? And when do I potentially run out of demand?
That's up to us to manage, right? And hence it being a cloud service. And we want customers to focus on the endpoint and the SLO of that endpoint, and leave it to us to worry about or have sleepless nights.
Yeah.
If you got 10 petabytes, maybe you should call.
We'll have to put something in the UI that says, too many zeros, dial this number.
Two questions. First one on the two tiers that you have, courses.
Yep.
3, right?
Yeah, I saw a space constraint, factor of space there. So are you saying it's going to scale better
Yeah.
as we expand?
Yeah, so for example, if you provision a 10 terabyte volume, you're actually getting 10 times 128. And so 1.2 gigabytes a second. So we've actually been able to live up to that, which is awesome. And we actually have a customer here that actually reached higher than that. But we sort of flatten out around 12 to 14 terabytes. That's when it doesn't scale endlessly, of course, but that's where we're sort of capping out.
It's linear until that point,
Yeah,
and then it flattens out.
Second question was around recently announced Google Cloud File Store.
Yeah.
It's a unique product you guys have here. So how do you sort of see those two things shaping up?
Devin, you want to take that? Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let the Google guy answer this.
Okay. So yeah, we can all kind of take a stab at this one, but the usage coming from those particular users, right? So people who are using NetApp aren't all of a sudden going to jump ship and use a completely different filer technology. Wooxie is a great example of that. They've been very, very awesome and being co-announcers of our particular partnership in general, right? They're using an on-tap solution, and they're very excited to use a GCP solution as well. For particular new users, maybe the SMB markets or those who are going through like a startup phase that aren't going to drop a bunch of gear in a particular data center, might use file store, but there's a yin and a yang for which solutions you're probably going to end up using.
And that's, from a customer perspective, we've had that question come up, and customers have kind of given us an answer, right? Which is, for basic needs, NFS, V3, whatever file store is okay, right? But as soon as you start talking about a service that is more feature-oriented, like this one, where you can change service levels, you can have advanced data management features, you can have multi-protocol, true multi-protocol from a single volume. These are kind of things where, when I talked about the customer context and customers wanting to move applications that were file-based, POSIX-based to the cloud, these are the kind of services that they need, right? If it was just about providing a simple NFS share, you stand up a single node file server and you have that, right? You don't even need a service. You need a service when it gets into the enterprise with these kind of features. But Manvinder, you can.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder, but
okay, well.
but from our point of view at Google, I think it's all about customer choice. So having multiple services with some features being available in a particular service, it helps customers, and that's what we're working towards. Today, if you're looking for example, SMB, you can't do that with file store. You can do that with Cloud Volumes. To give you an example, if you're looking for a NoSQL database, there are multiple NoSQL database options that are available to our customers. And so in the similar vein, we're working on both the offerings for our customers.
Good questions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
How does the pricing work out? Sounds like in the demo you're able to toggle
Yes.
Yeah.
the three options.
Yes.
Maybe different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So something the product manager should have covered earlier. Where is he?
Ace here. So.
Yeah, so the pricing is actually separate for each of the service tiers. And how we do this is based on allocated capacity, but call it the SKU is changeable, right? So if you allocate 5 terabytes today of premium, and in 1 week you change that to be extreme, right? We track the SKU with Google in the back end, so the billing engine will bill you 1 week's worth of usage on premium, and then 1 week's worth of usage on extreme, or whatever your capacity ends up being. So the flexibility is mirrored by the underlying economics. Yeah. Yeah, so it's right. So it's true pay-go in the sense that if you start with 5 terabytes of premium, you can change that to 5 terabytes of extreme in the middle of the month, right? So if premium is 30 cents a gig and extreme is 40 cents a gig, it'll be the average of those two is what you're going to pay at the end of the month.
So on the each services, which storage media?
Which storage media? Something that gives you either 16, 64, or 128 megabytes per terabyte stored.
Still none of your business.
Again, focus on the performance SLO. Yeah. No, not at the moment. And we wanted to keep this consistent with how GCP does resource management, right? And that's been, to Jons's earlier point, the core design principle, right? Keep it like a resource within a project that's isolated within a project. And we haven't really come up with any kind of use cases or customer information that said across project sharing is needed. I don't know, Jons, you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I mean, this is something that we really want to look into because let's say you have your development team that is actually developing, and then they want to push it, and they want to take take advantage of being able to clone a volume that's going from development to staging and then to production, and that might be totally different projects. So I really understand as a developer, I really understand the flow should really be there, and that's what we're really looking into. I'm really glad you asked that question because I've actually been fighting to actually get it implemented. But so I really get the use case for that.
Yeah.
When you're using the word project, are you talking about an XPN host project or a service project? Are you limiting it to a specific network?
Right. Good question. Good question. So the question was that is this an XPN shared project. So in Google, you have the ability to create a parent project and then child projects underneath with shared resources, firewall rules, and such. So right now, we're talking about a flat topology, right? So it's the service is available within the project that you provision it at. It's the ability to do cross-project networking and actually have a hierarchy of projects. That's something we're going to introduce later. There's some technical things, but mostly it's just testing and QAing that setup and making sure it works. So at the moment, think about it as a flat in the same project resource. Yeah.
Yeah.
More of a testing thing, like I said.
So how will you handle some of these cases where they need the performance but not the capacity?
Yeah.
They need the performance, but they don't need the capacity. So then my answer, and I'm sure Yonsi has his, but my answer is that when you're procuring a cloud volume, you're actually paying for a resource that has two dimensions, right? You have a capacity dimension and a performance dimension, and you're going to pay for what you need the most, right? So if you need capacity, you're going to pay for capacity. If you need performance, you're going to over-allocate capacity in order to get the performance you need. That's why we also have service tiers to be able to be, a little bit more flexible with that and not so rigid. But in some cases, you're going to have to over-provision.
Yeah, I mean, we were really, really lucky when it came to private preview customers. I mean, we basically got every single flavor of workloads. So we could actually work really closely with all those customers. One of them was running Oracle databases on file, and they've always been running that on block, for example. But they were actually clustering it, so it was multi-host attached, so they're actually getting way better performance or throughput on files. We saw that they were over-provisioning, even though the database might have been like a terabyte. Almost all of them, they were provisioning 10, 12, 14 terabytes to actually get the performance. So to your point, what was very valuable? What was the biggest value for them was actually finally they actually could run those Oracle workloads in a public cloud, and they hadn't been able to do that until with Cloud Volumes. So it was actually, yeah, you can see that you're paying for way more capacity than you're actually using, but.
Sometimes you have to pay for what you need, I guess, right?
Yeah.
In this case, you need performance, so.
I'd like just to highlight that really quickly too. So working with NetApp in this particular partnership has been instrumental in getting projects like this off the ground. So their customers are fantastic with feedback. Their customers are fantastic with saying what doesn't work and what does work. And the antithesis of that is what you're seeing on the screen today. So it's a really
Sorry,
great partnership.
there's another question? Yeah.
So NetApp filer, is there any feature set with integration with on-prem NetApp? Like for migration of data around, that kind of thing?
Yeah. No. So we already have, like in our staging environment with Google, we already have Cloud Sync or NetApp Cloud Sync that is actually can synchronize from an endpoint to endpoint and is agnostic when it comes to filers. If you're asking about something like Snap Mirror or something that's actually retaining deduplication and compression during transfer, no, it's not. But I mean, that's something that we are really looking into. But the thing is, it's actually a single tenant environment, a cluster-wide variable that is being pushed to a multi-tenant, and Google would just say, "Are you guys crazy? You're not." This would be a breach of all security protocols, basically, because you're taking something from a single tenant and the way it's actually required. But NetApp and Google, we are actually working on reducing the granularity of that, so you can actually set it on a volume level. And if that's the case, then we can introduce Snap Mirror. Probably revealing something that I'm not allowed to, like always, but.
Sure, go ahead.
When you choose your different service levels, is next in migrating the volumes, or is it just?
So, yeah, that's actually a great question. So we have a scheduler that is running, that is actually monitoring if the controller is congested, if it can actually handle changing the service level. If it's congested or can't handle those 128 megabytes a second, it's moved and we take care of that with the scheduler. So everything is automatic. It happens automatically.
It's per second, so are you metering the billing by second as well?
Yeah, so our billing granularity right now is per hour. Right? So we monitor capacity within a given hour. We have multiple data points within the hour that we average out, but the idea is to make it even more granular. But we figured at least to start with the pay-go option, we'll do hourly. Monitoring every hour, or pushing billing metrics every hour. Yes?
So you keep saying pay-go option. What other options are we considering?
Right. Yeah, so a good question. So pay-go basically is where we want it to start, like a cloud service, but what we want to introduce also is this notion of being able to do subscriptions, right? Subscriptions, and you can use a different term, but essentially customers that want to commit for a volume of capacity for a given duration, you get a certain discount, right? What those things are, we're still working through and trying to figure out what the sweet spots are in terms of is it 100 terabytes for 12 months or is it a petabyte for 12 months? And we're going to introduce those. There's always going to be sort of edge cases, right? But we do want to have some standard subscription options directly in the cloud that said that you have to use this much capacity and you're committing to use it for this amount of time. You will get billed monthly, but in exchange for that term and volume, you're going to get a discount of X%.
Yeah, just view it as like bundles, like petabyte bundle. So that's actually been like one of the feature requests from our private preview customers is actually to introduce that as well. So.
Yeah, yes. That's a Devin question.
Yes, it is. Is it integrated with Stackdriver for monitoring so you can do reporting and everything? Yes. Yes. Yep.
Customers ever engage NetApp for support?
Not directly, right? So the way the support workflow works is that the customer contacts Google. Google does basically L1 to L2 support, and if there are issues with whatever the infrastructure is or whatever the software is running in the background, those issues are escalated between NetApp and Google. NetApp may get pulled in to solve certain customer problems, but it's always Google owning the support relationship. There may be a NetApp person there to help solve, but Google and the customer are where the support endpoints are.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize. I mean, you'll have a single billing, you have a single support contact, you have a single contact for everything, and that's Google. So it should be. We wanted to have it as integrated in all areas as possible. So it's been really good. I mean, and it's been a fantastic journey. I mean, we've been doing like these code sessions, code jam sessions with Google and NetApp. So I mean, it's been a true partnership, and we're actually really proud of what it resulted in. So.
Yeah, just to read that from the Google side, it really is a joint effort to get something like this up and running, especially this holistically integrated. And as Olim was saying, from a user perspective, you should be able to come in as a GCP user, never standing up ONTAP, and totally understand the experience, and vice versa, going into ONTAP, never going into GCP, firing it up, and having a great experience.
How long did the project take to get to this point?
It's a great question.
Not as long as you would think.
Yeah. Good answer.
Does that mean you're not answering, or?
No.
The product manager just said it right there.
No.
Yeah.
Less than that.
WhatsApp in the cloud in 2014. So we've been at this for a while. This version of it is more recent, but we've done all sorts of things for a long time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you change the capacity on the fly?
Yeah.
Yep. That allocated capacity is a flexible number.
Yep.
You can change it anytime you want.
It is actually like a soft quota. So it's not like a hard limit. You can actually go above it, and we'll actually pick it up in the billing. So you can actually, if in some weird cases you don't want the performance and you allocate it a terabyte, and you can shoot over that, it's a soft quota. So it's not like if you're running a database, you don't want it to stop or corrupt the database. You want it to be able to scale up. So it's a soft quota, and it's more for you to manage and get the expected performance out of the
And as Yonzi was talking, I just did that for you. So that was going on in the background.
Yeah. And again, as I mentioned, this is monitored every hour from a billing perspective. So if you change the capacity halfway through the month, it's only halfway through the month that you're billed for the higher capacity. Yes, sir. I was wondering when that would come up. So regions, we're starting in US East 4, and our plan is that by the end of the year, we'll be live in US Central 1, as well as Europe West 3, which is Frankfurt. And then we'll be adding other regions in the US in 2019 on the West Coast as well.
And if you go to like create volume, I don't know if you guys saw that you can actually have like a region switcher. So you can actually, if you had subscribed to Cloud Volumes in multiple regions, you would basically just select here where you want to provision.
How are you handling the regional DR solutions without anything else?
So right now, these are availabilities within a region, accessible to all zones within a region, available within a region, but we're not doing cross-region yet. It's something that we have on the roadmap, the ability to be able to have a cloud volume in one region replicated to a cloud volume in another region. That's something that we're going to bring later on, but it's not there right now.
Yeah, and you can go into the SLAs, that the uptimes and everything that we are. That's your job, man.
This is. You already started. Go ahead.
Dude. Okay. I think it's 6 nines.
Durability. Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's tied to within a region. So yeah, like Alim said, I mean, ONTAP already has all these features. I mean, we are basically just slowly integrating it into GCP or into the Cloud Volumes. So you have like cross-site replication built into ONTAP. It's just how you're actually doing that on a multi-tenant level. So we're looking into all of that. So
and basically, you know, there's going to be additional things we add, but really when we talk to customers, as I said in the beginning, right, it was just this core notion of having an NFS or SMB endpoint with these features was really where they were stuck in terms of being able to either deploy or move new applications. That's why this has kind of been our super focus for the initial payload, and then the add-ons will come over time.
And I actually think it says a lot about the rate of development, because when we started, when the first private preview customers came in, they only got a mount point. Then we introduced on-demand snapshot policy, export policy, then Cloud Sync is coming, even Cloud Backup is coming, where you can actually back up data from Cloud Volumes to the Google Object Storage. So it's all, I mean, the rate of development has been really, really fast. And the features that we have been introducing. And it was kind of funny because many of our private preview customers, they were like, okay, NetApp is a real cloud company now, because they all of a sudden saw features just popping up within the Google console. Like, so it's, yeah, I mean, it's been, and we are nowhere stopping. I mean, we're going to continue with the innovation and the partnership, and yeah, it's good.
So we kept it to 4 slides or 5?
Yeah.
You want to go another slide, or?
Oh, no. But I think actually this having this interactive session and having you guys ask the questions, these really were what the rest of the slides are about. What regions, how do I get billed, how do I do this, how do I do that? So I think we're almost out of time, but at least from my perspective, to Jonsi's point, the partnership goes beyond. We're standing here doing this because of a broad team at NetApp and Google that supports us. Our business development team, Lena and Vinder, engineering team, hats off to these guys for pulling this off. Operations teams that integrate with support. So I mean, it's all around. It's been a fantastic partnership to get us to where we are, and we're really excited on what this can do for customers.
Yeah.
That's all we had. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.